Welcome back, dear listeners, to Unveiling Nightmares, where we're crafting nightmares one tale at a time. I'm your host, C.A. Bainham, and tonight we delve into the shadowy world of vampires, the original night stalkers who have haunted human folklore for centuries. Vampires, creatures of the night, the undead who thirst for human blood. We've seen them in books, movies and television shows, but where did these fangled fiends come from? What are their origins? So what do you think, dear listeners? Are vampires merely the stuff of legends, or could there be a tiny bit of truth hidden in the tales of these original night stalkers? The concept of vampires is ancient, dating back thousands of years, but what may surprise you is that these myths are not unique to any one culture. They are a global mystery haunting the folklore of many societies. Let's start with the Greeks. In ancient Greece, creatures similar to vampires were known as lamai. According to the myth, lamai was a beautiful queen who had become a child-eating demon. Over time, she evolved into a symbol of terror, a creature who could transform into a seductive woman, only to suck the blood from young men. The Romans, never once to be left out of a good story, also had their version known as stringes. These were nocturnal birds that would swoop down to feed on the flesh and the blood of the living. These legends likely influenced later vampire myths in Roman-occupied lands. Even the Hebrews had their own demonic blood-drinking entities known as estries. These female demons would drink the blood of humans, often appearing as normal women. To kill an estry, one would need to stuff its mouth with earth to prevent it from drinking any form of substance. Fast forward to the 18th century in Eastern Europe, this is where the term vampire as we know it today really takes root. The word comes from the Slavic term upaya, which was later Germanized to vampire. Reports of vampire-like creatures caused mass hysteria. People exhuming bodies, staking hearts, and performing various rituals to protect themselves. Now let's zoom in on the 18th century in Eastern Europe, a period and place where vampire hysteria really reached its peak. This wasn't just folklore whispered by firelight, it became a societal issue that demanded attention from the highest authorities. In areas that are now modern-day Serbia, Romania and Hungary, reports of vampire attacks are so common that they disrupted daily life. People were so afraid to go out after the dark, livestock was found drained of blood, and families reported seeing recently deceased relatives haunting their old homes. The fear was so palpable that governments and religious institutions felt compelled to intervene. Officials were sent to investigate claims, leading to what could be described as vampire trials. If a corpse was suspected of vampiric activity, it would be exhumed and examined for signs of undead life, such as a lack of decomposition and fresh blood at its lips. What's fascinating here is that the vampire scare was not mere superstition. It was a cultural crisis that engaged the minds of lawmakers, clergymen and scholars. It sparked debates that traversed the boundaries of folklore and science, faith and skepticism. And though we might look back at it as a period of irrational fear, to the people of the time it was very real and a present danger. But what truly makes the vampire? Is it the fangs, the immortality, or perhaps the aversion to garlic and holy symbols? Well, the answer is not so simple, as the traits attributed to vampires can vary significantly depending on the culture that you're looking at. However, one trait seems to remain constant: the insatiable thirst for blood. Let's start with the Western vampires. They are perhaps the most iconic. Think Count Dracula, pale aristocrat with fangs that come out when it's time to feast. They avoid the sunlight, holy water, garlic, crucifixes. And don't forget, they can turn into bats or mist or evade capture. But let's hop over to Asia for a moment. In the Philippines, the aswang is a shape-shifting monster that can suck the blood of the living or eat their flesh. Unlike the Western vampire, the aswang might appear as a normal person by day, transforming into a bat or, most commonly, a dog by night. In China, we find the Jiaxing, sometimes referred to as hopping vampires. These creatures suck the life force from the living. They are usually depicted as stiff corpses dressed in Jing Dynasty clothing, hopping around because rigor mortis has set in. They're not adverse to sunlight or garlic, but they can be repelled by Taos talismans. So as we can see, the concept of what a vampire is can be quite different depending on where you are in the world. Despite these differences, the thirst for blood, whether metaphorical or literal, seems to be the unifying factor that links these terrifying entities across the diverse cultures. Now let's talk about the undeniable mark vampires have left on our cultural landscape. From literal to cinema, these creatures have captivated our imaginations for generations. But what is it about them that enthralls us so much? Is it the defiance of death, or perhaps something deeper? Bram Stoker's Dracula, published in 1897, is often considered the quintessential vampire novel. This work laid the foundation for modern Western vampires: aristocratic, suave, but ultimately predatory. The novel wasn't just a horror story, it was a commentary on Victorian values, touching on themes of sexuality and the fear of the unknown. But the portrayal of vampires didn't stop with Stoker. Anne Rice's 1976 novel, Interview with a Vampire, introduced us to a more almost human vampire in the form of Louis. This was groundbreaking because it presented the vampire as a sympathetic character, tortured by his internal life and craving for blood. Rice's work opened the door for the exploration of the existence crisis faced by these immortal beings. And let's not forget their omnipresence in modern media, from TV shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which use vampires as a metaphor for teenage angst and growing pains, to the Twilight Saga, which transformed the vampire into a romantic hero. These creatures have evolved to reflect contemporary issues and concerns. Vampires also offer a way to explore societal fears and desires. Their immortality attracts us, yet their thirst for blood repels us. They are figures for both horror and allure, embodying themes of death, life, and the struggles in between. They defy death, yes, but at the cost of their humanity, leaving us to ponder, is eternal life worth the price? Whether you view them as monsters, metaphors, or misunderstood souls, there's no denying that the lasting impact vampires have had on our culture. They continue to evolve, reflecting our ever-changing anxieties, dreams, and fantasies. As we move from folklore and cultural significance, it's fascinating to note that vampires aren't just the stuff of myths and literature. There have been actual cases where individuals were accused of being vampires. This brings us to the realm of so-called real-life vampires. First on the list is Mercy Brown, a 19th century Rhode Islander whose tale became one of America's most famous vampire stories. After Mercy and two of her family members died from tuberculosis, her surviving family began to fall ill. Desperate and suspicious, the townspeople exhumed her body, finding it unusually well preserved. They removed her heart, burned it, and mixed the ashes with water as a supposed remedy for her sick brother. Across the ocean in Serbia, we have the case of Peter Blagovic from the 18th century. After his death, villagers claimed to have seen him wandering at night, and 9 deaths were attributed to him. His body was exhumed, showing no signs of decay, and was subsequently staked through the heart, inciting a gush of fresh blood, hallmarks of vampirism according to local beliefs. Then there's Arnold Parol, also from Serbia, but a century earlier than Peter. A soldier turned farmer, Arnold claimed to have been attacked by a vampire while stationed in Greece, but had cured himself by eating soil from the vampire's grave. After his sudden death, people in the village started dying under mysterious circumstances. His body was also exhumed and found to be suspiciously well preserved, prompting a stake through the heart. What these accounts share is a palpable sense of fear and a desperate need for explanations in the face of death and disease. Whether it's a TB epidemic in the 19th century America or unexplained deaths in 18th century Serbia, these cases exemplify how the myth of the vampire has been invoked to make sense to the inexplicable. These aren't just eerie tales, they're a window into how societies have grappled with the unknown. And even today, the idea of real-life vampires lingers at the edges of our imagination, serving both as a cautionary tale and a morbid curiosity. So what do you think, dear listeners? Are vampires merely the stuff of legends, or could there be a tiny little bit of truth in the tales of these original Night Stalkers? Well, we've reached the end of tonight's journey through the haunting world of vampires. If tonight's tales have left you thirsty for more, you're in luck. All links to my books, which delve even deeper into the realms of horror, can be found in the description below. For more spine-tingling content, don't hesitate to visit my website, bainhamhorror.com, and if you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button and ensure you never miss an episode of Unveiling Nightmares. So as you tuck yourself in for the night, ponder this. Immortality may be alluring, but remember it comes with a price. Sleep well if you dare, and until next time, this is Unveiling Nightmares, crafting nightmares one tale at a time.